what a wonderful gift that we have for you today. We are going to give you the gift of laughter. And why laughter for AARP? Because there's some things about laughing that we know. For instance, we know that being exposed to humor leads to better mental functioning. We know that laughter helps people who are actually grieving, and it helps to add oxygen to the blood and to the brain for brain health. So we're going to just talk about laughing today, whether it's March, April Fool's Day, or May, or June, or July. Laughter is always appropriate. And so to that end, AARP Michigan had a joke contest, and we all laughed together. And who you are seeing in front of you, drum roll please, are the phenomenal top 3 winners of that joke contest. Laura, Judy, and David, we're so happy to have you with us. We know that you've been laughing ever since we've last seen you and making new jokes, but we're going to get to some of the jokes, or to the joke that made you a first, second, and third place prize winners for our joke contest. But just talk with us first a little bit about each of you. And Laura, why don't you start? How are you doing today? And tell us how you got into telling jokes. Everyone can't tell a good joke. I've tried, so I know everybody can't tell a good joke. How did you get into joke telling?
It's funny you ask that, because my father was just the ultimate, always, no matter what the topic, is always a clean joke. And it would always say, "Oh, George, it's a George joke." And now my niece's daughter has carried that on. And that's kind of why I try to keep up with some jokes, so that when I see her, I can exchange jokes with her.
Well, you do such a good job at it too. And it's not just in the joke telling, but in the delivery of it, right? That makes such a difference, how you deliver jokes. Yes. And what about you, Judy? Tell us how you got into joke telling and what.
Well, I have a very large family. I have a lot of children, and we love humor. Even to this day, my kids, of course, are grown people. Some of them are retired, but we send each other jokes daily. I have one son that every Friday we get about 20, 25 cartoons that he collects during the week, and we comment on them. And even in the direst of times, when their father was passing away, and they had to sit in an anteroom for about a week. And if you saw the text that went back and forth, it was kind of morbid humor, but they kept each other going. It could be a book. And so it's kind of a family thing. Humor runs in our family. We love it.
And there's probably a lot of longevity that runs in your family as well, then, as a result of the humor, because we know it's good for your mental health, it's good for your physical health. People just don't laugh enough. And particularly, in these days and times, one could say that there's not a lot to laugh about, right? There's just been some challenging times.
You're not kidding.
Yes, but humor makes, it sort of balances us out, and it should be such an important part of all of our lives. Tell us, David, what about you? How did you get into joke telling?
Well, I'd have to say I'm not really much of a jokester. In fact, I think a lot of my friends might be surprised when they see this. But I can tell you a little bit about how I came to this joke.
Okay.
Well, this joke came to me while I was walking home from a visit with an unusually uncommunicative medical specialist. I was thinking about why he was so uncommunicative, and he's not a pediatrician, but I was reminded of an incident involving my sister-in-law and her young son. He had an ear infection, and she knew what the standard treatment was for this. It's a inserted drainage tube in the ear, and she wanted to discuss an alternative treatment because this wasn't a very good solution for her son, very active son, and kept falling out and so on. So she made an appointment with her pediatrician, and the pediatrician walked in the treatment room, took one look at the boy and said one word, "tubes," and walked out. She was furious, and she refused to pay for the visit. Well, so it kind of made me think of a pert pediatrician. Not that all pediatricians are this way. My wife told me a story about another pediatrician. He was meeting with a group of students talking about how to decide on a career. He said all professions involve a certain amount of routine work that can be boring, but you need to choose a career in which you enjoy or at least get satisfaction out of the routine work. And as an example, he said there are always procedures that he had done dozens or maybe hundreds of times, but he always tried to remember that what was routine for him was very likely not at all routine for his patients or their parents. So it'd be great if that insight and attitude was shared by all physicians.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got a lot of your joke telling from physicians, and that's interesting because one of the things that we know about laughter is that it does release certain hormones in your body that really helps with healing and helps with grieving, it helps with depression and anxiety, and also those healing properties from what the research has shown helps with cancer, Alzheimer's disease, coronary heart disease, asthma, COPD, arthritis, allergies, diabetes, and many, many, many other health conditions. And so there's some real healing elements attached to laughter. And so let's do a little bit of laughter right now. Let's hear a joke or two. I don't know which one wants to go first, but I'm ready to laugh out loud. And people will tell you who know me that not most of the time, 120% of the time, the glass is always half full for me. So, and the other percent of the time I'm trying to find something to laugh about. And there are a lot of things. And with that laughter comes, a happy place in your life, right? So who wants to go first telling their joke and get us to that happy place? All right, Judy.
Okay, the joke I told was, I'm so old that when I was born, the Dead Sea just didn't feel well.
And I heard it before and it's still funny. So tell us where that joke came from.
Oh, that joke actually, it came from my son, who sends original jokes every single day practically. And he sent another one that I thought was hysterical that I can tell, a one-liner.
Go ahead.
That said, I just got fixed up with a man in the zoo. I'm so excited from the zoo. I'm so excited because I think he's a keeper. By the way, I just have to add, I have a 3-year-old great-grandson who tells a joke on Zoom, not on our family chat room, every single day. And they're adorable. They're 3-year-old jokes. And
wow.
he picks one. He says, they'll say, do you have a joke? He said, yes. He said, why did the dinosaur cross the road? And my son, his grandfather would say, why did the dinosaur cross the road? And he said, because chickens weren't invented yet. That's a 3-year-old joke, but they're adorable.
They are adorable. And Alexa, she'll have jokes all the time. You can say, tell me a joke, Alexa, and different jokes come up. And one of my colleagues, actually, their grandchild likes to listen to those jokes on Alexa, goes and tells Alexa to tell me a joke. So if you have a loved one who is in a long-term care facility or there's some social isolation going on, sometimes those devices, those technology, electronic devices are helpful because music, we know that's good for your brain as well, joke telling and laughing. And so, sometimes getting that device or investing in a small amount into a device like that for someone who can't get out and doesn't have the kind of family that you have, Judy, who texts all the time and has their own Zoom family link and great grandchildren who are 3 years old. If people don't have that, there's still some ways that they can laugh and feel like they're connected as well. So you talked a little bit, Laura, too, about your history with joke telling, and I know that you also won a prize, and these were some nice prizes. And thank you, by the way, for Judy for donating yours back. But tell us a little bit about why you even entered this joke contest. What motivated you to enter that with all that you've got going on in your life?
Well, I think, like you said, I've read all the research and I've heard about how laughter is so important in your life. And I do try to follow that. If I'm ready to go to bed, I'll watch a half-hour show of like Big Bang Theory, something that is a comedy, because after watching the news and putting on your mask and everything else that's going on, I don't want to go to bed in a bad mood. So I've followed laughter. And like I said, I grew up with my father, and that was just part of our life every day, was laughing.
That's fantastic. And what about you, David? I mean, I know that you had a wonderful joke as well. I know you talked about how the doctors have inspired you. And you said you're not so much of a jokester, but what motivated you to enter the contest?
I don't know. It's just kind of a whim. It's kind of uncharacteristic of me. But this joke, people enjoyed this joke, so I thought, what the heck, I'll try it.
Great. But you all remember the jokes. I mean, I've heard so many jokes in my life and I thought, oh, I'm going to tell that the next time I get together, with someone, and I can never remember all the jokes. The only
Yeah, me
joke
too.
that I can really remember is this one. What goes like this? And everybody says, well, I don't know. And I said, I don't know either, but here comes the other one. That's the only joke I can ever remember. And people look at me the same way that you just did, Laura. They look at me like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with her? But how do you, do you just have a repertoire of jokes in your brain that you can just pull out at any time?
Me? No, not at all. I can't
Not at
remember
all.
jokes either.
Oh, good. I don't feel so bad. What about you, Judy and Laura? Do you have a whole repertoire that well, Judy, you do. I know you do because you're telling jokes every day. But what?
Yeah,
I used to have a repertoire of jokes because I was on the road as a salesperson. And so that was part of the spiel or whatever. You come with the joke of the day. But like you, not like you, like me, I'm pretty old and I've forgotten, but a word, I'll hear a word and it will click in my head and remind me of a joke. And then I'll start to tell the joke and not know the punchline. And that's what usually.
That's not fun. I don't like it when people do that.
Oh God, I hate it when I do it.
What about you, Laura?
yeah, I'm similar. I'm not like my father where it doesn't matter what we're discussing. He'll have a joke already. I have to write them down and remember them, put them in my phone or something because unless it's like Judy where the word finally just triggers it for me. But most of the time I don't have them on the spot.
And I know, Judy, you said you do, but do any of the rest of you write your own jokes? Do you have original jokes? Are all of your jokes original, or you just listen to other people?
I don't.
No. What about you, David? Do you have any originals or?
Yeah, I can't remember other people's jokes.
Yeah, give us one of your other original jokes.
Well, I have on the subject of medicine, I have to say I'm a little disappointed with the medical profession. I don't think they're keeping up with technology. I get an email every month with a detailed health report on my car with 16 different categories. I guess they have a lot of sensors on the car reporting back wirelessly. Why can't we do that with our bodies? Some people are afraid that Bill Gates was putting microchips in the COVID vaccine. I can't wait until they can actually do that. They could circulate throughout our bodies, checking things out. Every month we could look at how we're doing. Muscle tone down 8%, reflex time 50 milliseconds slower than last year, cognition down 4%. Time to get out the weights and keep doing those crosswords and Sudoku.
That's scary. Microchips in our COVID vaccine. That was, and a year from now, I'll get a report telling me that I need to lose this gut or need to exercise more. That is a little scary. I love it. Did you just create that on your own?
Yes.
That's good. It's sort of a storytelling kind of joke. And I saw that you were reading a lot of that, which made me feel better as well, because there's no way I'd ever be able to capture that otherwise if I were trying to repeat that.
Yeah, I'm afraid I couldn't.
That's good. That's good. So microchips in the body. Now my mind is going to a whole different program. Maybe that's the next Real Possibilities TV show where we talk about microchips and whether or not they should be put in our bodies, and have Bill Gates as our guest. What about you, Judy? I know you've got a ton of original things. Tell us about one of your most fun or favorite original jokes.
Well, truthfully, I'm a storyteller.
Okay.
I'm not a joke teller. And the last career I had was I was a corporate trainer. And so when you train, you really have to illustrate the point that you're trying to make to the group with a story. Mm-hmm. And I try to make the stories as humorous as I can, but that would bring home the point. And so I don't think I'm as much of a joke teller. And with a family my size and a life that I've lived, I have so many stories I could bore you to death. and I have this one son who is an original joke writer. He's of course isn't, but would love to be a stand-up comic. And I get original jokes from him every single day, and they are hysterical. Some of them, some aren't, but most are. So that's my life with stories and jokes.
Very nice, very nice. And you get an opportunity to share those stories and some of those jokes. What's the funniest thing that you can ever remember happening while you were in sales? The funniest thing that happened?
In sales, I can tell you, I can tell. I
You're a
just told
corporate trainer. I'm sorry. You're a
I
corporate
told a
trainer.
story. Well, I'll tell you the funniest story that I actually just did for a talent show. I live in a senior residence and they had a talent show. And it'll take a few minutes or, is that okay?
Sure, go right ahead.
All right. When I had 4 little children, they were under 8. And I was at home and I was going to wash the kitchen floor. That's a joke in itself. But I took the kids and I put them in front of the TV, and we had a dog. We had a Great Dane dog that my husband, who I eventually became not my husband, insisted that we get, and he would train the dog, which didn't happen. So now we have a Great Dane dog that if he got on my shoulders was above my head about 2 feet. And I'm going to wash the floor. So I took the dog, I put him outside. Kids are in front of the TV. I'm in my scrubs. And all of a sudden I hear the dog crying. And I open the door, the dog runs in, and he had cut an artery on his ear.
Oh.
And he was shaking his head, and the blood was going back and forth all over the kitchen. I mean, I ran next door to my neighbor. I said, "Can you come and watch my children? I have to take the dog to the vet quick." I called the vet. I put the dog in my white station wagon, which turned red. And I had to drive, if you know Detroit, all the way down Woodward, because it's the only vet that will take a dog that size. So I'm driving down Woodward with the dog who's shaking his head. Blood is going all over the car, all over the windshield, which I'm trying to wipe so I could see, all over my face. I'm crying, tears. My eyes are burning. And we're driving down Woodward, and a young man runs across Woodward, bangs into the back of my car. I don't hit him, he hits me. Slam on my brakes. I jump out of the car. I lean over the boy. He's got a boombox. And I say, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And he looks up at me and he goes, "Ah!" And he jumps up and he runs away. Meanwhile, the man behind me had slammed on his brakes. He gets out of the car and he grabs me by the arm and he says, "I'm calling an ambulance." I said, "Don't call it. You're hurt. You're full of blood everywhere. Where did you hit yourself?" I said, "I didn't hit myself. It's my dog." He said, "What?" And I said, "It's my dog." And he said, "What are you? You're delirious." Anyway, I won't go on, but it took me a while to convince him I had to get back in the car, drove to the vet. They met me in the ante room with a hypodermic to put the dog to sleep. I mean, not dead, but to sleep. And that's the end of that story. But that's one of the funniest things that ever happened in my life.
Well, I'm sure that would be very scary, not just funny, but scary. If I were to hit somebody and saw blood all over them, I'd probably just pass right out. So
you know what I found out after is that was a scam that young people were doing. They were running across the street and hitting a car on purpose for insurance purposes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which I never would know.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. All of you have just so many wonderful stories to tell. And sometimes it's nice just to get away from all the heavy, serious stuff that's going on. And Laura, you're an AARP volunteer. Everything else that you're doing. How do you use your humor as you're volunteering for AARP?
Well, I'm volunteering a lot lately with the fraud network. So you're talking some serious things with people. So you try to inject some lightheartedness. They feel bad sometimes that they were, taken advantage of, and you have to try to talk them out of that mood, and humor comes in handy with that. So
Laura and David, in the minute or so that we have left, share with the audience your winning joke. Laura, you go first. What was the joke that got you a prize winner for our AARP joke contest?
Okay, mine is a simple one. What do you get when you mix a centipede and a parrot?
We give up.
Okay, it's a walkie-talkie.
And is that an original?
No, that was from, I looked up some family friendly jokes, and that was one of my favorites.
That is cute. That I'm sure children would like that joke as well as older adults. So thank
Right.
you for that, Laura.
Mhm.
Okay, David, you're up. Close us out
Okay.
with a good joke.
Why are pediatricians so easily annoyed? The answer is because they have very little patience.
Yeah.
Great.
David, Laura, and Judy, I thank you. I just wish I could start every morning with all of you and just laugh, 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 laugh. But we will be able to look at this show into perpetuity and think of all of you. And I just appreciate what you do. And please continue to bring laughter into our world. We need that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Amy, it's so nice to have you with us today. Talk with us a little bit about dementia and how to best communicate or effectively communicate with people who have dementia or Alzheimer's.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for having me. So dementia, people with dementia typically have a hard time managing their feelings. So there's anger, there's depression, there's grief, there's sadness, all of that comes through. So as dementia progresses, a lot of times communication becomes very difficult. So what caregivers need to understand and remember is that who they're talking to is a person. They are an adult. They are not a child. And so even though the communication back to the caregiver may not be ideal, as caregivers, we need to understand that we are taking care of this particular person and that they are still a person. And we want to make sure that they do feel validated in what they're saying. So some things that you can do to help with that communication is to communicate verbally, as well as communicating non-verbally. So physically, it could be a touch, it could be but just make sure that your face matches what you're saying. So if you're happy, you're happy. If you're sad, you're sad. And you just want to make sure that those things come through, because otherwise you're sending mixed messages.
And that's important to make certain that you mentioned they are a person. You continue to have respect for the individual, and nothing's changed except in their own mind. So it's important to make certain that people continue to respect the people they're taking care of and also get some rest themselves, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very important to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Patience makes a difference, believe me. Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate you being here with us today. That was excellent information. And there's more information on our website if anyone's interested in looking at aarp.org/MI. Thank you.
During these winter months, inside, outside the home, people are falling, slipping and falling. What do they do after they've fallen? Should they jump right up? What do they do?
Well, sometimes they pop right up.
Yes.
But you got to
That's
take
a
a quick assessment and say, what hurts?
Mhm.
Am I oriented? Kind of feel around a little bit, because sometimes you're just a little dazed. But
Yes.
generally speaking, you go by pain. Pain
Yes.
is the number one parameter. The problem that we run into is that people are not real excited about going to the ER right now,
Right.
even Ready Care Center. They just say, well, I'll sit on this and want to know. So you have to ask yourself, what did I hurt? Is it an arm? Okay, fine. But if I hit my head,
Yes.
I got to think about that. And
Right.
maybe I'm going to go in there because you really do need to be assessed.
Right.
If you really think you broke something and it's hurting like heck, you got to, don't just sit around and wait.
Right.
You got to go in there and get it checked out, regardless of what's going on with COVID.
So what's the first thing you should do? Assess the pain, Courtney?
Assess the pain, yeah. Check their mental state. They should just how they feel baseline, if they can get up, if they cannot, and making sure that there's someone around that they can ask for, especially if they know that they are more prone to falling, having the precautions set in place prior. But some people don't like to go to the ERs again because it's COVID.
Right.
They're not interested,
Right.
but it is still important because people still fracture, people still get head injuries.
Right.
That's
So
right.
Should
You
they
can take
wrap
a little-
it, put ice or?
Well, you can take a little Tylenol. You can take some,
Mhm.
ibuprofen. People will normally do that, but don't keep taking it over and over and over
Right.
again, especially if it's hurting more and more. You got to
Exactly.
check it out.
yes.
Heat, ice, which one?
Ice is always good in regards to controlling swelling
Mhm.
initially.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing you would think about. And if
Yes.
something's puffing up, you really got to consider what's going on.
on.
And elevation?
Well, elevation, depending on what part you hit,
Yeah.
if it's your head.
That's
So
it.
right up there.
Hard, yes.
Right.
So that's a different story. So
yeah.
yeah, I think the logical things that people know what to do. It's just a question of, should I go into the urgent
Mhm.
care
Right.
ER, and the concerns they have about what they're going to see when they
And
get
you got to
there.
weigh the
Right.
the
And there's
choices,
this,
right?
you know, they lay back a little bit more.
Mhm.
And they'll say, oh, I'll be all right tomorrow. Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. So
Yes.
be smart about it.
Yes, absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. And when they come in and they get treated, then the sooner they get treated, the recovery's a lot less at that point, right?
Very, very much so.
So don't be afraid to make some wise choices if you should happen to fall. Thanks for being here. Craig, thank you for being with us today. You know, there's been so many rules changes about required minimum distribution, RMD. Tell us what we need to know.
Required minimum distributions is actually a very personal item in regards to when a person starts to take it, where they are during retirement, as they're starting to transition into retirement, if they plan on working a little bit while they're in retirement. There are quite a few different rules that are related to required minimum distributions. One of the biggest factors that we talk about more specifically, though, is when to take it and when not to take it. And that does kind of occur what is most personal to the individual when I'm talking with each client. In many circumstances, if they delay in taking their required minimum distributions, that means there's going to be more in monthly income. If they are taking it sooner rather than later, that means there's less that they're going to be taking on a monthly basis. Now, the caveat to that is if a person was taking roughly about $1,000 a month, roughly $12,000 a year, and they delayed taking it for roughly 8 years, that's roughly about north of $90,000 to $100,000 a year that they actually give up. So in many calculations, we take a look at what is that they're actually giving up, because every dollar that they take from that they don't take from Social Security, they're taking out of their retirement investments. And so if one of their goals is to maximize how much they're passing off to the next generation, they may want to take their Social Security sooner rather than later, because every dollar they take from Social Security is $1 that they're able to keep invested. The other caveat to that is if they're wanting to or continuing to work, and what their income level is while working as they're transitioning into retirement or as they are in retirement. The break-even point in almost every calculation that I've done has been roughly about the mid-80s for a person to, if they took their Social Security earlier rather than later, to where the benefit has been for them to take it or hold off on it to be at a later time period. But as we know, we all age. And as we get older, we want to be able to enjoy the funds that we have and enjoy family while we're a little bit younger, and be able to pass on as much as we can to the next generation.
Craig, is there a required age that you have to take the required minimum distribution?
Yes, Paula, there is a required age. That age used to be 70 and a half, so a person could delay it until 70 and a half. That age has been pushed out to 72.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching. Hopefully the information you received today, you will share with someone else, because we want to make certain that everyone has news that they can use on AARP Real Possibilities.